I've been using this stool for far too long to put all my stuff on. What I could really do with is some shelves right there. Yeah, just like that. So let me show you how I made them. I planned to start this video to say use an angle finder, as no corner in most houses is perfectly 90 degrees, right? So let's go in and measure the angle. Surprisingly enough, it was perfectly 90. Now, let's work out how big to have the shelves. I used a tape measure to act as the front of the shelf so that I could work out the depth, and then once happy, folded it in to get my measurement. I settled on 32 centimeters and then marked this on either side of the wall. I lined these marks up to the tape measure just to be sure I was happy with the overall size. Because I'm using offcuts, I made sure the corners were perfectly square. As you can see here, I'm just lining it up to the speed square. Then just need to mark 32 centimeters on each side, and then just draw a line between the two marks. Now I can line up the track saw and get cutting. You need 2 of these for each shelf, so to be as accurate as possible, I line this up and then I can mark around it. And back to cutting. Now I just need to cut another 4, same process. And here we are, 6 of them all cut. Now to make the shelves, I need a lot of strips of wood. I measured and marked 3 centimeters on each end, and then cut through them. I need quite a few strips, so here's another cutting montage. And here they are, all cut. I gave everything a quick sand to get rid of all the rough edges. For each of these pieces, I measured and marked the centre points. I did this for the front and the back on each piece, which will make sense when we come to assemble them. Now for the strip that go at the front of the shelf. I lined the top up to the strip so I could mark the angled cuts on either side, just like so. Then it was over to the miter saw. I lined this up to the angle I just marked, then cut all the strips I was going to use for the front of the shelves. The sides would be the brackets that go on the wall, so I measured and marked these, and then I could continue with cutting. To make this easier, I'll put a cut list below in the description. Here you can now see the basic carcass of the shelves. These 2 back strips will be the brackets attached to the wall, and the other 2 strips make up the shelf. Now before assembling these, I had to sort out this, my lovely oak wood veneer. I laid one of the shelf panels on top so I could position it with the wood grain going across it. Then I could pencil in my cut lines, leaving plenty of overhang. I did this for all 6 panels. I placed a scrap piece of wood underneath for cutting these. First I did a gentle score line with a Stanley knife. This makes the blade follow the line a lot easier. Then you can do a few firmer passes until you've got it cut out. Then it's just a matter of repeating this for all the rest. Now back to assembling them shelves. I brushed on PVA glue to the top of the front strip, and on goes the top panel, being careful to line this up, and once happy with the positioning, I could secure it in place with some nails. I flipped it over, then I could PVA the little strip. I lined this up to them centre lines I drew earlier, then flip it back over and nail it in place using the centre line on the opposite side. Now that's one side all secure. Back in with the PVA on the opposite side. Carefully line up the bottom piece and then secure it in place with the nails. I then left this to dry for a few hours, then came back and gave it a sand all over. And now for the fun bit, applying that wood veneer, and to do that I'm using this contact adhesive. Going by the tin, it takes 10 minutes to become tacky, then forms an instant bond on contact. So let's get on with it. I found the easiest method was just to pour it on. Then using the spreader provided, I made sure it covered both surfaces as you can see me do here. Then I just needed to wait 10 minutes for it to set. I checked that it was at the tacky stage, which it was. So I took the shelf and then carefully lined this up to the veneer. And you may have noticed my pencil lines from where I traced around the shelf. This made lining it up a little bit easier. Using a scrap piece of wood, I pressed the veneer down, working centre out. Before doing anything else, I gave it another 10 minutes just in case. Then I just needed to trim off all the overhang, which is the same process of how I cut all the wood veneer out, using a Stanley knife. Then it was just a matter of repeating the same process on the opposite side. Before applying the front, I gave it a quick sand to remove any rough edges, and in case there was any drips, I also taped up the sides. Then I could apply the adhesive to the front. And after 10 minutes, on goes the front. Tape removed and then back to trimming. Then I gave everything a very good sand over. This also helped the joins to blend in. Here's a side-by-side comparison of the before and after. You can see how well the edges blend in. With all 3 shelves complete, to finish them off I used this wood oil. And as always, I use a Scotch Pad to apply it. These are then left 24 hours to dry, and then the next day I pre-drilled all the holes for the brackets. I worked out the placement for the top shelf, and as you can see I just mined reach and stuff to make sure it's at a good height, and once happy I marked this position on the wall. Then using the first bracket with a spirit level, I lined this up to the marking and penciled this in. I could then line the bracket back up with ease and drill some pilot holes into the wall. Then I could drill out the correct size for the Rawl plugs and then simply put them in. I then screwed the screws into the bracket with them poking out ever so slightly. This makes lining up to the Rawl plugs a little bit easier. Then I just had to screw it into the wall. Quickly double check with the spirit level that it's straight, then to do the same thing on the opposing wall, but being careful that the top of the brackets line up on either side. I put the spirit level across both brackets to ensure everything was level. Then I could just simply slide on the first shelf. To work out the height of the second shelf, I simply just used my tallest item that would go on them, and marked this on the wall and repeated the same process. Second shelf on. I measured the distance between the first 2 shelves, then marked this on the wall for the last shelf to keep everything uniform. The last shelf on, and that's it all finished.